Forces will soon be out of Afghanistan, saying the events of 9/11 20 years ago cannot explain why we should remain here in 2021. Here's Peter Alexander.
America's commander-in-chief tonight paying his respects to fallen U.S. troops from Iraq and Afghanistan at Arlington National Cemetery.
Look at them all.
Earlier, President Biden declaring America's longest war will come to an end by September 11th, speaking in the same room where President Bush first announced military action in Afghanistan.
We went to Afghanistan because of a horrific attack that happened 20 years ago. That cannot explain why we should remain there in 2021.
The withdrawal of more than 2,500 service members from Afghanistan to begin within weeks, but missing the May 1st deadline set by former President Trump. President Biden saying America's goals have been achieved.
Bin Laden is dead, and al-Qaeda is degraded in Iraq and Afghanistan. And it's time to end the forever war.
The president's move drawing bipartisan praise, but also criticism.
Al-Qaeda and ISIS are going to come back. He's paving the way for another 9/11.
President Biden's own CIA director today acknowledging there's a, quote, significant risk that al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups will try to rebuild once the U.S. and its allies leave. Still, for the military, it marks the end of an era, more than 2,300 U.S. troops dead. The war lasting so long that multiple generations served.
I went and served my country in this theater so that my son wouldn't have to.
But eventually, Master Sergeant Trevor DeBoer's son, Specialist Peyton Sluss, would serve there too.
It was too long to be there. Something we should definitely improve on so we don't have 20-year wars down the road.
Despite concerns the Taliban could overwhelm the Afghan government, President Biden says waiting for the right moment is a recipe for staying there indefinitely. Lester?
All right, Peter, thank you. There's a desperate search off the coast of Louisiana. One person is dead and a dozen are missing after what's called a platform vessel capsized when a storm suddenly broke out. Sam Brock is there.
On the stormy shores of the Gulf, an intense rescue mission continues tonight for 12 missing people, spearheaded by the U.S. Coast Guard, which faced conditions it had not anticipated about 8 miles south of Port Fourchon.
80 to 90 miles per hour were the winds, 7 to 9 foot seas, and extremely limited visibility.
Authorities won't confirm if weather caused a 129-foot vessel to capsize Tuesday, but they did reveal recovering one body from the Gulf today. After a combination of U.S. cutters and Good Samaritans miraculously saved 6 of 19 crew members, but not among that group.
Oh, God, please let him be one of the ones.
Dara Morales' 37-year-old son, Chaz, a father of 3.
I'm scared and I'm devastated and I'm broken.
Her latest text to her son, so far, unread.
Kids go bananas. They need their daddy to come home. I want him to come home. I don't need him to come home.
The U.S. Coast Guard says it's possible some of these crew members could be in an air pocket underneath the water in the ship. As for Dara Morales, she says the last text message she sent her son, I love you, at 2 a.m. Lester?
All right, some tough hours ahead. All right, thank you, Sam. His name became synonymous with unimaginable fraud and financial ruin. Bernie Madoff, the Wall Street money manager who became infamous for running the biggest Ponzi scheme in history, died today at a federal prison in North Carolina. Madoff was serving 150 years for conning thousands out of tens of billions of dollars, causing staggering losses when his scheme was finally exposed in 2008. Bernie Madoff was 82. Now to our series, American Extremism, and new insight in the shocking plot to kidnap Michigan's governor. Tonight, one investigator is speaking out for the first time about the roots of the conspiracy. To our Stephanie Gosk.
Angry protesters at the Capitol confronting police and demanding to be let inside. But this isn't Washington, D.C. This is Lansing, Michigan, a year ago. A rally organized to protest COVID restrictions, with members of the state's militia groups openly taking part.
What happened here was less violent than what took place at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. There were some scuffles and one arrest, but according to law enforcement, a seed was planted. Among a small group of people, a plan was taking shape to do something much, much worse.
The alleged plan was to kidnap the governor and put her on trial for treason, all because of Michigan's COVID lockdown.
When that rally took place in Lansing, I was very concerned about some of the people attending. because I knew who they were.
Former U.S. Attorney Matthew Schneider was part of the state and federal investigative team, now speaking publicly about the case for the first time. They had been watching the group called the Wolverine Watchmen for a while. By the fall, more than a dozen men would be arrested for the alleged plot. One man pleaded guilty, the rest not guilty.
At what point do you switch from, okay, this is just a harebrained idea, they're just talking, to they're getting prepared to commit a crime?
Right. Well, that is the critical point for law enforcement. When I saw that the folks had actually taken some steps, for example, to go and look under a bridge to see if that was a place that they could put explosives to deter law enforcement from coming.
That this wasn't just talk.
Correct.
According to the indictment, some of the planning happened here at this unlikely home in the rural town of Munich. The group allegedly used the property for tactical training.
Target practice on the tires and that kind of thing.
Anything.
Janice Kitley is the township clerk.
What was the community's reaction to these charges?
Well, they were horrified and embarrassed.
Authorities seized an arsenal of weapons, hundreds of guns, thousands of rounds of ammunition, explosives, and artillery shells.
It's one thing to have a gun because guns are protected under the Constitution. Explosive devices are not.
Do you think a high-profile trial like this one, and potentially these defendants if found guilty going to prison, do you think that that will limit the number of threats out there?
Well, we can hope so.
But it sounds like you're not sure it will necessarily.
There is no doubt that there will be future acts of domestic terrorism in America. What we need to do is minimize that number, to bring that number down.
A problem, he says, not just for Michigan, but for the whole country. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, Detroit.
Up next for us tonight, battling COVID in the poorest countries where we all need to pay attention. Our exclusive reporting